Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Cricket Podcast. I'm Nick, as usual, joined by Azza. Hello there, Azza.
Hi, Nick. Today is the big one because it's the
Yeah,
team that we
today
both
is
support.
the big one.
Yeah,
It's the big one. It's the undisputed best team in the IPL's history.
ever.
Should have won several titles ever. Really, I mean, this team could beat any 11 put together from any generation.
True. I
Uh,
I think it's the best franchise that's ever been in world sport.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
Yeah,
the statistics prove that. I think
yeah. No bias
the
there.
passion. There's no bias. I think
Yeah,
you know, it's you know, it's a capital. What's better than a capital? You start everything with the capital.
exactly.
It's
It's a
got to be the
proper noun.
capitals. And it's a proper noun. Let's dive into the Delhi Capitals. We're giddy because over the last 2 years, last year in particular, and now this year, probably on paper looks like the best, second best team. Made a final last year, and there's some good direction, good coaching, and that's all led to fantastic fantasy performances.
Yeah,
Some really great fantasy performances. And in that vein, I just want to start with looking at the best so far. Who has been the top point scorer for Delhi so far?
yeah. So we're looking at the 2021 season that was played in India in the first half, and Shikhar
Yep.
Dhawan was just by a whisker Delhi's sort of top fantasy scorer. But I think it's sort of undisputed to say that he was Delhi's best player. Um, he showed that with his amazing form. He's upped his strike rate later in his career, which is really top points to him for that. So he's been the best so far, and there's not much to say that he's gonna do much worse because he's coming off a series or a tour in Sri Lanka where he was captain and he was very good. He was
Yep.
in the same form that
He
he
looked
was
great.
in the IPL. So
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I agree. I think he looked great. Um, so, okay, he was great before the IPL was um, paused. He's looked great recently. What about disappointing so far this
mm,
season from a Delhi point of view? Who's
yeah,
really? I want to. I mean, I know Ashwin didn't score a lot of points, but he had family, related COVID scares, and he
yeah,
left the tournament early-ish. So we'll put him to one side.
yeah.
Aside from Ashwin, who do you think
There's a
um,
few names that come up
disappointed you?
to my mind, but it has to be Kagiso Rabada right at the top
Yeah,
of that most disappointing player, because if you look at his sort of performance in the last IPL, if I'm not wrong, he was the purple cap winner, um,
correct. Yeah,
and he was also Delhi's highest point scorer by a little bit. He was in the 1,000 fantasy points for a season mark,
yeah.
which is
That's. I mean,
great.
that's mega.
Yeah, it's huge. And this season, he's been sort of not even middle of the pack. He's sort of lower middle order of the pack. He's looked a bit off color, really. And I
Yeah.
think Delhi's woes in the fast bowling department have been made worse because they refused to pick sorry, Anrek Nortia. But yeah, it's Rabada for me. You can also say Steve Smith, a player of his caliber, should be scoring quicker. There's a few names out there, but it's got to be Rabada for me. I'm not sure if you have any other opinions.
No, I think Rabada is correct. I think just given his pedigree, you'd think KG would have done better. Henrik Nortier needs to play, I think, in this Delhi team. We'll
Yeah,
hopefully, when we're getting to the Delhi, when we're covering Delhi matches,
yeah,
he'll be up in discussion. But you're right. I think Steve Smith also needs to be mentioned.
yeah, that's
You
true. Um,
he took up a lot of balls. He wasn't scoring fantasy points. It was
yeah,
you know he wasn't winning matches for Delhi, which is bad from a fantasy point of view. But sometimes you can have players who have good fantasy performances that don't really lead to anything in a match.
yeah.
Steve
See
Smith
Manish
wasn't doing
Pandey.
that. He just wasn't picked. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve Smith just wasn't picking up
So,
any points.
so just to go back to how you get fantasy points in T20 cricket, well, listen to our insights episode if you want to get into the details, the nitty gritties. But as a batsman, what's important for Steve is to be scoring, well, of course, runs, but score them quickly because you get bonuses for those. And by scoring them quickly, you're also probably scoring a lot of boundaries and sixes, which is also giving you bonuses. And Steve just hasn't been doing that. So yeah,
Yeah. So okay, let's before we move on to our last topic, which I think this is a good little good little connection, is potentially another player that has been disappointing, but could be one to watch actually for the second half of the tournament is the old Bitstoin, Marcus Stoinis.
yeah,
He was Delhi's second best player in the UAE last year,
yeah.
but he's been a bit disappointing so far.
He has been. Well, I question whether it's been Marcus Stoinis's uh, style of play that's been off, or is it his role in the team that's still not sure? I mean, he's sent out
Yeah.
to open in the playoffs one day. He's playing number seven another day. He's bowling 4 overs. He's bowling 0 overs. I'm not sure what his role in the team is, and as a result, his fantasy points often fluctuate because if he's not bowling his quota of 4 overs, he's bowling giving you a couple of overs and just batting number seven. He's not going to give you the most points really, and that's really where he's
So
missing out.
so we're not looking at him really, not as not looking at him, but he's maybe not top of the choice as the best player
Yeah,
prediction, so to
yeah,
speak, for want of a better phrase. Who is for you? Who's a player that you think this guy is going to be the best performer fantasy points wise for the second half of the season for Delhi?
yeah. I'm not sure whether I want to pick Shikhar Dhawan or Prithvi Shaw. I love watching both of them bat. It's always
Yeah.
risky to pick two openers in your fantasy team, riskier to pick four openers in your fantasy team. But as a player to watch, I'm going to go with Shikhar Dhawan, um, with the caveat that I'm also very interested to see Prithvi Shaw come into his own later in the tournament.
Sure,
And
sure.
don't forget,
Yeah.
we're expecting Shreyas Iyer to be back as well sometime in this
Yeah,
month.
I was so you took the words right out of my mouth. I think
Yeah,
Shikhar Dhawan and Prithvi Shaw have been sort of the recency bias points towards them. Shreyas Iyer coming back is exciting. It's huge for Delhi. I think it just helps with the overall balance.
yeah,
I think poor Jinx Rahane is probably going to be the one who drops down for that spot.
yeah.
But one player I really think is going to be worth watching is Ravi Ashwin.
Mm,
I really think he's spent 5 tests effectively, sat on his ass doing nothing, waiting to play cricket. He's been drafted into the Indian World T20 side. He wants to remind everybody that, listen, he's not just a guy who's a decent spinner, he is a world class spinner. And his points generally have been good. Delhi struggled last year in the IPL when he was injured. He ended up
yeah,
picking up a lot of points despite having missing games through that injury.
yeah.
He's working on his batting. He works on his bowling constantly.
True.
I think he could be a little dark horse pick.
Yeah. So with Ashwin last year in the IPL, we're looking at about 80 points a match or so. Uh, fair to say he's a good pick, especially if a lot of you have a number of teams going into competitions. So Ashwin,
Yeah.
uh, look out for him, pick him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with that we can probably wrap up our session.
Yeah,
We just to point out to the viewers, we genuinely both love Rishabh Pant. I know if you've been listening to us consistently, we've been dropping Pant from our test squads, and we haven't really discussed him here. That's not to say that he's not worth picking. It's just this
yeah,
is a smaller preview. As the matches come, we'll get into more depth.
yeah,
And if this has been a bit longer than the other previews, you can't help us. We're excited Delhi fans, and we're looking forward to this team, aren't we, Azza?
yeah. I'm very excited. I think this is as good a chance as any for Delhi to win a title. Uh,
Yep, yep, I agree. Hopefully that means people winning fantasy titles as well. And on that note, Azra, I'm going to bid you farewell,
Yep.
and I look forward to chatting with you for the next preview on
Nice
the
one.
next episode.
Thanks, Nick.